I did some research into a jazz musician from the 30s and 40s named Mezzrow, and he was an interesting cat. But one of the things that I definitely wanted to hit on was this idea that he had his own strain. He was a white guy who played clarinet in different jazz bands, and he was down with the fucking clown, bro. I'm talking like B.B. King, like I don't think it was B.B. King actually. It's blues. The other guy, Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong. He was Louis Armstrong's manager for a period. Showed up, got busted in 1940 for selling weed to him. They sent him to prison, and he has to be put with the black people because he is, quote, voluntarily a Negro.
Damn.
He was down with it.
Damn, transracial.
Bro, he was the first case I've seen of like really transracial in the sense that he was a Jewish man from suburban Chicago who became the biggest pot dealer to the jazz musicians, went to prison for it, and was allowed to be on the, quote,
just goes
Negro
to show,
side.
Has nothing to do with your skin.
Yeah. They let him go.
Oh, they put him over there. That's where he was comfortable.
Wow.
But the thing I wanted to get to was his strain was famous. They were known as Mezzrows, or like who's the man with the MEZZ. You can hear all these old songs where they mention it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was his strain. And they knew if you wanted the good shit, you went to MEZZ.
Yeah.
They used to call it jive. You want to talk to the man with the jive, you'll find Mr. MEZZ.
Is that where the term jive turkey comes from? Is that like a person who smokes weed?
I know that jive was a term for weed in the 1930s and 40s, and then also one of the quotes from MEZZ I saw, he said, "I feel like it's my job to get people hipping to the cannabis," and I was like, they put in parentheses to teach or learning, and I was like, damn, this man been using hipping.
Yeah.
Been using
that's
trying to get you hip.
the etymology of the word hippie is actually someone like who was a hip person, someone who was on the new edge. It's funny because we think of hippies as being like sort of old school nowadays, but that's just because the definition of the term hippie has changed. A hip person would be like, I don't know, like a scientist these days.
Yeah, and they talk about MEZZ being one of the forefathers of the beat culture, because beatniks, there was a lot of white people who were beatniks, and that was late 40s, early 50s, guys going in doing poetry, freeform jazz, where it's like, yo, fuck your 4-4-4-4, my man, like we out here getting wild with these rhyme schemes.
Yeah.
So like that era was part of the Mezzrow scene.
That's
and like
badass.
the fact that this man like. The transracial thing is what really, I keep coming back to that too, because it's just like, damn, bro, like he was, and you see pictures of this man with the clarinet. He got the massive backwoods blunt looking fucking clarinet.
I need to see a picture of this man. Can you look at Mezzrow?
Yeah, interesting cat. But yeah, the pictures of him, I was just thinking to myself like, man, this cat fits right in, baby. Big Mezzrow.
Look at that,
fits right in, bro.
Damn.
Big J smoking the first cannabis advocate. Mezzrow. Nah, I don't know.
That's funny because I've actually seen this guy's face on, like, cannabis posters and stuff like that. I just had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
He's the man with the MEZZ.
Yeah, for real.
They called him King of the Muggles.
There's
Muggles
literally
was a term for people who smoked weed at the time.
In every single photo where he's with other people, they're like black. He like didn't hang out with white people at all. I love how he brings his glasses up when he plays.
He was married to an African American woman.
I mean,
That's
I wouldn't
amazing.
be surprised to hear that. I mean, he's obviously a man.
He reminds me of one of these white
an
guys that
African
like
American
moves to Japan. Like I feel like I'm very close with these kinds of people because like I love Japanese culture and stuff like that. But for some reason, white people
Rachel
just love to
Dolezal.
branch out until the.
Look at the suggested searches. The first one's Rachel Dolezal.
Who's that?
She's the woman who self-identifies as black.
Who was the chair?
Wow, they like put him in this because I guess he was on that. He's
on that wave.
He was on that wave.
Milton Mezzrow. Wow, Milton. I wonder if like he looks a lot like Milton Friedman.
I just his story stuck out. They were talking about early influences of marijuana on music culture, and it was a documentary where they were talking to Run DMC, Cypress Hill, Snoop Dogg, everybody else. They had this whole fucking segment on MEZZ, and I was just like, that shit right there.
He's like the Wiz Khalifa of his generation.
Yeah, this man's and then he went to jail over weed in 1940 when they had the fucking Marijuana Act in the 1930s.
Dude, so yeah, that's exactly what happened too. Because a lot of people don't know. It's like marijuana wasn't a big deal. Nobody really cared. Actually, nobody was even smoking marijuana at like turn of the 19th century, like 1900s and stuff in the United States. Nobody's smoking weed at all. Let me pull back up this history article that I was in, but Yeah, so nobody's smoking it. But then come the 1900s and stuff, Mexicans, right? The Mexican Revolution and all that stuff happened, and there was a lot of Mexican immigrants. Well, Mexican immigrants start introducing people to pot smoking, which is interesting because most of our marijuana still comes from Mexico, right? And hence what I said I was going to tie it back around to why it's a J and not an H, right? It's because it was actually Mexicans that started introducing it to America in the first place.
I believe you're mentioning Sensimilla.
Yes.
This is the
seedless.
This is the ancestral strain of weed that all of our modern day weed comes from, because there's many different species of the cannabis plant, one of them being hemp. And hemp obviously doesn't get you high, but you can make clothes and paper and stuff out of it. And like a lot of people, like when they say like George Washington used to have a cannabis plant, it's like it's hemp. They were making clothes and fiber and stuff out of it.
They didn't even have any psychoactive.
Yeah, they didn't like, smoke it. I can tell you that.
Right. This is the early 1900s. Immigrants from Mexico and the United States during the tumultuous years of the Mexican Revolution introduced the recreational practice of smoking marijuana to American culture. Massive unemployment and social unrest during the Great Depression stoked resentment of Mexican immigrants and public fear of the evil weed. As a result, and consistent with the Prohibition era's view of all intoxicants, 29 states had outlawed cannabis by 1931. So, and then the Marijuana Tax Act comes in 1937, which further criminalizes like the imports and stuff of it.
Put MEZZ in jail.
Essentially, right? Yep. And so, but I mean, that's why he's probably the godfather of shit. I mean, this is the first dude to really be out here like slanging that shit illegally, you know, like through, he's like the Al Capone of weed, you know.
That's funny because at first he was slanging it legally because there were no laws against it, and then all of a sudden one day he woke up and it was illegal to do that.
Yeah, you know, so it's very interesting. But Mezzrow is the first guy to like really be out here, and of course it makes it's no surprise to me that it was heavy in music and stuff, because we still see that today in our cultures and stuff too, that you know, marijuana is closely tied with music, because I often hear people point to marijuana helping them in their creative process.
Yeah.